Hi, welcome to angle relationships. So we're just going to talk about the main angle relationships at the beginning of geometry, and we'll start with the one we use the least. The one that we use the least is adjacent angles. Angles that are adjacent to each other are next to each other, and that means they share a common side. So if this was an angle, there's the angle with the vertex, and then we put another angle attached to the same vertex. These angles are adjacent angles, this one and this one, because they share this side right here. So we're going to just draw a little picture. So here is an angle, and then we're going to put another little piece in there. That's adjacent. And this is the common side. They have no real relationship beyond just the fact that they're touching. It's more of a description term than it is a useful term in geometry. Then we have vertical angles. Vertical angles are two angles that are across from each other on intersecting lines. So there's two lines that are intersecting, and these angles here would be vertical angles. They are across from each other. They look like, to me, they're kissing like that. They also are these two. Oops, I should have probably drawn this before. They're also this one and that one, the green ones. So any two angles, anytime two lines cross that the angles are across from each other like these, they are vertical angles and vertical angles. And the cool thing about vertical angles is that they're always congruent. Remember, the symbol for congruent looks like this, an equal sign with a tilde on top. And it means that this angle and that angle are exactly the same size. So I'll draw another little example here. If this angle was 42 degrees, then this angle is 42 degrees. All right, let's move on. So we also have linear pairs. Linear pairs are two angles. They're adjacent, meaning they're touching, like they share side, and supplementary, which means they add up to 180 degrees. They form a straight line. So we have a straight angle, straight line, and it's kind of divided up like that in any degrees. But this angle and this angle are a linear pair. So it means that they add up to 180 degrees. So I'm just going to do like a star and a smiley face, and then write star plus smiley face equals 180 degrees. And if you look at this picture up here where we have vertical angles, we also actually have a linear pair. If we cover any two, these two angles would be a linear pair. Those two angles would be a linear pair. Those two angles would be a linear pair, and obviously so would those two angles. All right, supplementary we kind of just talked about. Supplementary are any two angles that add up to 180 degrees. So they don't have to be adjacent like the linear pair. They can be separate, like you could have a 20-degree angle over here and then somewhere else a 160-degree angle, and that adds up to 180 degrees. So they're supplementary angles. Sometimes it will say just supplement, find the supplement. It means the same thing. You still want to find the angles that add up to 180 degrees. And then the last one is complementary, or complementary angles. And now, again, that could go by the word complement. And those add up to 90 degrees. In an example of those, there's two ways you'll see it. You'll either see a right angle that's divided into two sections that would add up to 90. And it doesn't have to be bisected. It could be 40 and 50 degrees, or any amount that adds up to 90. Or you could also see them separate, 40 and 50 degrees, where if you put them together, they would add up to 90. Just in case you have forgotten, this symbol right there means it's a right angle, which is 90 degrees. All right, so now that we've talked about what those angle relationships are, I want you to use that to help with this little practice before we do some problems. I'm going to move my paper aside, but you might want to keep it right next to you so that you can refer to it when I'm asking some questions. So in number 1, we're talking about the angles that actually have the number 1 and 2 in them. Not all the angles in the picture, just the ones that are labeled with something. So the 1 and the 2 in this case. These are not adjacent angles because they don't share a side. We're looking at this one and this one. They don't share an actual side. They're not touching each other besides at the basically nose. So those are not adjacent. They are vertical angles. We don't know that they add up to 90, so they're not complementary. They are not supplementary, and they're also not a linear pair because linear pairs would look like that, these two right here. So just vertical. Angle 2, or number 2, these angles are adjacent because they're sharing this side. It's part of both angles. So if I trace this angle and then I trace the other angle, you see that they're sharing that side, so they are adjacent. They're not vertical angles. They are complementary, but they don't have that box in the corner. Since the box is on this side, it has to be on this side as well. So you could draw it if you wanted. They are complementary because those two angles add up to 90 degrees. They are not supplementary, and they're not a linear pair. Even though you see the straight line, the linear pair has to equal the straight line, and this one doesn't. It's a little blurry to me. Hopefully that's better. Okay, so here we have angle 1 and angle 2. And since those share that side, they are adjacent. They are not vertical. You would need this one and this one, or this and this to be vertical. We don't know that they're complementary at all, but they are supplementary because they form this straight line together. So they are supplementary. And because they are supplementary and adjacent, if you look at your notes over here, linear pairs are supplementary and adjacent. So it is a linear pair. I hope you're catching on. All right, number 4. These angles are what? What do you think? Adjacent? Yep. Okay. Are they vertical? No. Vertical angles look like this. Are they complementary? Well, there's not a box in this corner, so we can't say that they are complementary, and they're not supplementary for sure. Linear pairs form a line, a straight line, so these are not a linear pair. Those look like this. So just adjacent. And now they get a little trickier, and you're going to need to get used to crazy pictures like these. I want to point out a couple things. Do you see this little mark here in the corner? That means that this angle is congruent to this angle, which actually makes this ray right here a bisector. Just to do a little review there. That's a bisector. Okay, we are talking about angle 1, this one, and angle 2. Are those adjacent, sharing a side? No. Are they vertical? Yes, they're across from each other when two lines intersect. Are they complementary? Actually, they are complementary, and I'm going to explain how I know that because it's kind of strange. This angle is 90 degrees, which means that this angle, I'm going to draw this big, but you wouldn't normally. This angle has to be 90 degrees because they form that straight line together. Because of that, we know that each of these, this one and this one, are 45 degrees because this was a bisector. Those are congruent. It shows right there with those marks. If angle 1 is 45 degrees, angle 2 has to be 45.